So I'll be talking about the battle or siege of Yorktown, which British General Lord Charles Cornwallis and his army surrendered to Washington's American force with its French allies in 1781. But let's get into the history of it. So, in the summer of 1780, about 5,500 troops of the French, with Comte de Rochambeau at the helm, they were in Rhode Island, and they came to meet the Americans and help them. But at the same time, British forces were fighting on two fronts. Clinton was occupying New York City, and Cornwallis, they captured Charleston and Savannah, South Carolina, and they were heading up north, so they were going to pinch them in between and try and get a big victory. But this is kind of where George Washington made his stand and was able to kind of rally the end of the American Revolution. And so basically what had happened was that, George Washington was with the Continental Army in New York. They planned to attack Clinton there, and they found out that the French fleet was heading down towards Chesapeake Bay. They had said, okay, well, let's fool them and think that we're staying to attack and fight in New York, but we're actually going to leave and go down and meet them. So they concoct this whole plan of building a new city so that Clinton could see, so that he thought they were going to stay there, so that they would prepare a battle up north, but they would actually be sneaking down. So that's what they do, and they sneak down, and basically in September of 1781, Washington and Rochambeau arrive in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is just outside of Yorktown. This is where Cornwallis's men were. They had 10 small forts, and they all had little artillery stuff and different trenches that all connected, and it was going to be a really big battle. So Cornwallis finally figured it out, and he asked Clinton for aid, who was up north, and he said, yeah, I'll send you 5,000 more soldiers, and well, we'll see what happens with that later. So after the Americans left New York, they had approximately 6,500 soldiers with the 4,000 French soldiers that accompanied them. So they faced about 8,000 British troops, and they dug trenches about 1,000 yards from the British, and they just started digging. And as soon as they got their artillery lined up, they started hitting the Brits, and it really knocked them out pretty quick. Within a few days or a month, I'm sorry, they knocked out most of the guns, and they were getting it done. And when all hope about seemed lost, Cornwallis received some news from Clinton, and it was actually bad news. His men weren't coming from New York; they'd been delayed, so he was going to have to try and fight it out. That's when the Americans started digging parallel trenches closer to the British lines, and eventually they would take out numbers 9 and 10. Alexander Hamilton actually played a huge role because he had a group of men that took out a bunch of different posts that the British held, and he proved himself on the battlefield, and he was a founding father, so that helped him out tremendously. But yeah, General Cornwallis surrendered after that. Hamilton and the French only lost, a handful of men, and they were surrounded by the enemy fire. They had to